This is a story about three friends who in 1968 went out into the woods to experience magic mushrooms and had quite a story to tell later on. Corey Eckhart and two sisters, Connie and Pamela Haigton, drove out to the Siskiyou National Forest one weekend from their college dorms to experience magic mushrooms. They brought booze and some grass and planned on having a far-out time. They arrived about mid-morning and got situated in a nice meadow which was off the beaten path. There was a running stream not too far away from where they chose to sit down and have their experience. They were in the shade of the big pines which ran along the edge of the meadow. Upon getting comfortable and making sure they had their drinks within reaching distance so they wouldn't have to worry about walking, they ate their magic mushrooms and then smoked some grass and drank their booze while waiting for the mushrooms to take effect. Corey was having a blast being out there with two girls. He was thoroughly enjoying the chance to flirt and be the only guy around, so if the girls wanted to flirt they had to do it with him. As such, they passed their time playing slap and tickle until their bodies started feeling a bit funny. It was probably about noon by then. The sun had risen to straight overhead. There was slight breeze which caused the tall grass to bend and tickle one of the sisters, who commented on the sensation. That was perhaps the first hint that their senses were becoming elevated. They would soon be drifting free of their egos, greed, jealousy, all the things which can make mankind appear so ugly. In place came curiosity, eagerness to explore not so much the forest surrounding them but the space they were taking up. Nothing further. It started out very tame. All three had become slightly drunk from their booze and the grass had a calming effect on them, so they just were in a quiet group buzz, and then one of the girls started laughing, which then became contagious, and soon all three were laughing like crazy and just having the time of their lives. Then they started seeing things. This would cause whichever one it was that saw the strange thing to break out laughing, and naturally they would be asking, "Did you see that? Wasn't that amazing? Can you wait to tell everybody what amazing stuff we are seeing?" Then one of the girls stopped laughing for a second and then she burst out laughing harder than ever while pointing to the most recent thing she had hallucinated. Only when the other sister saw it she also first stopped laughing, taking in its huge size. Then she broke into an even harder laughter than before, slapping the big imagined beast and not thinking twice when she hit solid muscle and a hairy body that had never worn clothes. When Corey saw the monster he snuggled right up next to it and told it that he wanted to have as big of muscles when he grew up. They offered the beast some of their fruit wines which it seemed to enjoy. They even got it to eat some mushrooms, which wasn't very hard. In fact, the beast wolfed them down, which by comparison the three college kids had a lot of trouble getting theirs to go down. The beast acted like it ate them all the time and liked their taste. What was really funny was there was a period of time where they discovered they didn't have any more mushrooms, but everything was okay because their imaginary friend took them a short distance in the woods and showed where there were many more mushrooms growing. These were not dried, which meant they were much more potent. Everyone danced around the mushrooms and it just seemed so natural that they would of course be there since the group had run out of the ones they brought. Of course. Naturally. Where else would they have been? Why didn't the group see this before? They didn't even need to bring mushrooms with them. It had been so unnecessary. Oh well. All is okay. Look how our new big hairy friend has shown us the way. Everyone ate some of the fresh mushrooms. It was really lucky the imaginary friend knew which mushrooms were safe to eat, or they MGHT have all died. Instead, it was a fantastic experience which even included some orange orbs that came out and danced around for a while. The big hairy guy danced with the three college kids while the orange orbs would flitter around them. This went on all afternoon. It was an orgy of new experiences and feelings and discoveries which no time in any of their past had any of them ever had such a phenomenal, life-altering experience. And to think they enjoyed it all while hanging with nature's version of Shaq, although they wouldn't be able to make the comparison for quite a few years. Connie and Corey said they never partied with Shaq, but that they imagined it would be a lot like hanging with him because he is just so damn lovable and big. Which is what their imaginary friend was like. The kind of big fella you just want to go up to and give a hug because you know he's gonna return the love. Pamela was also in agreement but did not want to admit it because she thought it might not be politically correct. I have to say I don't think the big guy would have a lot of dislike to throw on that party. But if he is offended, then please know nothing was said to be meant to be taken that way. They chose Shaq out of love. If you don't find him hugely lovable, then you're not looking close enough. The man is a saint in basketball clothing. Well, like all good things, their afternoon began to spill into evening. The dancing had been done. The booze drank. The grass smoked. It was a time for recouping. Reflection. Regrets did not exist. In fact, some of the regrets they had brought with them on this trip were now gone. Could you call it enlightened? There are many in current times who would say they were at the very least made aware of a much bigger picture than had existed before. Finally, as the sun began to set, the big hairy imaginary friend said goodbye to the 3 college kids. They stayed there and slept through the night, the wine having ended up winning the battle between itself and the mushrooms. The next day, when the 3 friends woke up and shook off the hangover, they were surprised to discover they all 3 had an imaginary big hairy friend who didn't smell very good, but he took them on an imaginary tour of the forest, which ended with them finding a pasture of mushrooms which they all partook and enjoyed immensely. The good times not ending until long after they returned back. It was really weird, they all had the same trip. Perhaps it was because they were all talking about the same thing when the mushrooms took effect? Nobody could remember. Then, as they became more and more lucid as the morning went on, eventually the 3 regained their sense of smell. It returned slowly, but the odor they had managed to get on them was making things happen much faster. As you may be aware, the sense of smell is the strongest sense associated with memory. Well, the more their sense of smell returned, the more they began to question whether they had hallucinated the big hairy guy, or was he really there? Because that unpleasant odor was exactly what he smelled like. They were nearly certain they were not imagining the horrible odor. Then the wildest thing of all happened. One of the sisters had something sticking her in the butt. It was something stuck in her back pocket which she hadn't noticed at first, but the more she was getting over the hangover, the more she noticed something was in the back pocket. She dug her hand into the pocket and pulled out a smashed-up fresh mushroom. It looked exactly like the mushrooms they had hallucinated were filling a meadow. Corey stopped their van. What the heck had happened? No way. No way they had done mushrooms with an actual Sasquatch. Although now that he thought about it, the creature was very solid when he touched it. And that breath. Not to mention the body odor, which was what they still had on them. It was too crazy to believe, so they didn't try to think about it too much because it was just too wild to consider. Yet they all 3 say it happened if you put a gun to their head and told them to tell the truth as they knew it to be. What an insane story. Yet they cannot get around the facts as they remember them to be. Could it be possible all those years ago a Sasquatch came out of the woods and did mushrooms with some hippies? It is too bad they didn't come to such a realization until after they had left the woods, or they could have went looking for footprints, which would have been all the proof this writer would need to confirm he had been there. Thank you for visiting. Please subscribe if you haven't, as it is very much appreciated. It really helps out an upstart like this channel. Godspeed to all.